We are doing the quality over quantity thing in today's video because we have 5 NHL pieces of news to dive into, 4 trades, and 1 rejected trade. And I'm gonna be real, like, each of these trades are not really big enough to get their own video. Like, these aren't Mackenzie Weegar trades going between Calgary and Utah. These are decently minor moves, so I just thought, hey, why not combine all of these into one conversation here, just so we don't need to spend too much time on each of them, because we have a trade between the Vancouver Canucks and the San Jose Sharks, the Minnesota Wild and the Florida Panthers made a deal, the Maple Leafs and the Avs have gotten some business done, and the Vegas Golden Knights made themselves a swap with the Washington Capitals. Let's start out with Minnesota and Florida, as the Panthers have traded away defenseman Jeff Petry in exchange for a 2026 7th-round pick. What a fall from grace it was for the Florida Panthers, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, only to see themselves as sellers by the next deadline. Now, I don't think they really care because they do have multiple cups to their name, and back-to-back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals appearances. But Jeff Petry is a guy that always seems to be at the center of it all, considering the fact that he has been going from team to team to team. He had made the Stanley Cup Finals once against the Tampa Bay Lightning. He ended up losing with the Montreal Canadiens over there, then found himself over in Pittsburgh, played in Detroit, found himself in Florida, had 8 points in 58 games, and now he is a Minnesota Wild. Petry is a veteran right-handed defenseman. There's a lot to like out of his simple game. I'd say that he was a lot more offensively talented a few years ago, of course. I mean, he's pretty old. But for the most part, Petry is a very well-respected vet. The Minnesota Wild are looking for the pieces they could use to go far in the playoffs. They already got one in Quinn Hughes. Could Jeff Petry be a meaningful add to their bottom pair, or in a 7th D role? The price is literally just a 7th-round pick, so I don't think anybody in Minnesota is really having any buyer's remorse about this one. So, Minnesota getting Jeff Petry, we can see why they ended up doing it. Let's move on to one of the other trades over here, another minor deal. Take a look at this. The Vegas Golden Knights didn't even bother to include an image with the text on the screen or whatever. The Vegas Golden Knights have acquired forward Nic Dowd from the Washington Capitals. Take a look at this over here. Golden Knights GM Kelly McCrimmon announced today the team has acquired forward Nic Dowd from the Capitals in exchange for goaltender Jesper Wickman, a 3rd-round pick in 2027, and a 2nd-round pick in 2029. That's a pretty sizable haul, honestly. Nic Dowd is a guy that I didn't realize would have been able to fetch that kind of a price. He's 35 years old, 6'2", 196, center right wing, right-handed guy. Signed on till the end of next season, making $3 million a year. Nic Dowd has made his bread and butter with his penalty killing and his defensive-minded responsibility. He had 16 points in 55 Washington Capitals games this previous season, and he has been a consistent 20-plus point guy with them ever since 2020, essentially. He had a brief stint with the Vancouver Canucks where he was utterly useless, but then he really found his game shortly after as a member of the Capitals. It's kind of funny how everybody sucks in Vancouver, but then by the time they find themselves on another team, they end up looking really good. Happened to Jason Dickinson, happened to Nic Dowd, could happen with Elias Pettersson, who really knows? But Dowd, over the past few years of his career, has definitely showcased himself to being one of the more reliable and safe PK guys. And at 35 years old, with another year left on the contract, he's able to fetch himself a really decent haul like this. Goaltending prospect, 3rd-round pick, and a 2nd-round pick. Let's go over to that goaltending prospect, Jesper Wickman, from the Hershey Bears in the AHL. He's on the Hershey Bears now. He was playing out of the Henderson Silver Knights, .866 save percentage in 18 games played. Okay, that's really not great. Last season, he had played 42 games in the ECHL. I'm starting to have my reservations as to whether or not Jesper Wickman, a former Vancouver Giant, is going to have any significant NHL potential, but still, there's an asset to acquire if you're Washington. Plus the draft picks make it all the better, right? Speaking about draft picks, let's go out there and talk about the Maple Leafs. They went out there and traded away Nic Roy to the Colorado Avalanche. So the Avs are getting the guy that they wanted to fill in a spot on their center core. You may be asking yourselves, why do they need other centers? They got McKinnon. They got Brock Nelson. Why do they need somebody else? Well, it's because good teams have good players everywhere. You don't necessarily settle if you're Colorado, and that's what they did here. They sent over a conditional first in 27 and a conditional fifth in 2026 in exchange for Nic Roy. Take a look at the article over here. In the event that Colorado's 2027 first-round pick is in the top 10, Colorado will send its unprotected 2028 first to Toronto. Colorado currently holds 3 fifth-round picks in the 2026 draft. The lowest of those 3 picks will be transferred to Toronto as part of the deal. Lowest. What does that mean? Does that mean the lowest as in the one with the highest absolute numerical value? Like picks number 111, 112, 113. Is 113 the lowest because it's technically the worst of the 3? Or is 111 the lowest because it's the lowest number? I'm not too sure. It's a 5th-round pick. Who really cares? But Nic Roy is a good pro who ended up having a pretty meh season in Toronto. I mean, 20 points, 59 games. A lot of people in Toronto definitely struggled this season, and Roy definitely was not a guy that I think signed up to be in that position anyway, considering the fact that he was essentially solace for the Mitch Marner acquisition to Vegas. Definitely not a comfortable position for him to be put into, and with the Maple Leafs doing so badly, you can tell why this was a necessary move. They were going to have to be sellers at this deadline, and Nic Roy seems like he's going to go out there and try to help out Colorado. Roy has had some 30 to 40 point seasons in the past with Vegas. His 41 point campaign in 70 games, 23-24, stands out as the highlight, despite the fact that he ended up scoring 0 points in 7 games in the playoffs that year. Regardless, he is a Stanley Cup champion. He does have that experience, that pedigree, so joining a team like the Colorado Avalanche seems like a pretty nice piece of business for a guy like Nic Roy, who won't all of a sudden be put into a top center position with this new team. And finally, in regards to trades, we have one more trade that I wanted to talk about in this video. The Vancouver Canucks have made themselves a move, sending away Jett Woo to the San Jose Sharks for defenseman Jack Thompson. Canucks GM Alvin announced today the club has acquired Jack Thompson in exchange for Jett Woo. Jett was a key part of our AHL championship-winning team, and we would like to thank him for all that he has done for the Canucks organization. Bringing in Jack will add to our organizational depth on the blue line, and we look forward to working with him in Abbotsford. Now, I actually really like this move, because when you think about it, Jett Woo is a guy that Vancouver drafted back in 2018. He was a second-round guy, 37th overall. He's 25 years old, and unfortunately, Jett Woo just never really cut it to being an NHL caliber player. He's been a fine AHL guy this entire time, and he had some pretty good days with the Moose Jaw Warriors. But ultimately, Jett Woo, back when he was drafted, a lot of us thought, hey, he could become a player one day. He never did. Meanwhile, Jack Thompson is 23 years old. He is also a right-handed defenseman, and last season, Thompson had 10 points in 31 Sharks games. I remember seeing this guy once in a while pop up in fantasy hockey as a best player of the week that nobody has on their team type of player. It was Jack Thompson and it was Jackson Lacombe who were continuously popping up and showcasing value despite not really being consistent NHL guys. Thompson this year, unfortunately, only had 12 points in 42 games, but if this 10-point and 31-game stint from his 22-year-old year is to be trusted, Jack Thompson could have himself a legit NHL career long-term. I don't think it's impossible here. Ultimately, though, it is a win for Vancouver because they are getting younger, they are getting a guy who has NHL experience. That is an upgrade over Jett Woo. And finally, we have one more piece of news that I wanted to dive into here. You already probably saw it from other parts of the internet, but the Colton Parayko trade to Buffalo has been rejected. Colton Parayko has declined to waive his no-trade clause to join the Buffalo Sabres, according to Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman. As a result, as the Athletics' Pierre LeBrun noted, the reported trade will not happen. On Frankly Hockey, Frank Saravalli indicated Parayko is open to a trade from St. Louis, but will not accept a move to Buffalo specifically. As frustrating as it may be for both clubs, it is Parayko's right to dictate where he goes, given the no trade protection in his contract. And Kevin Weeks indicated that Parayko would prefer to stay in the Western Conference, specifically mentioning the Ducks and the Kings, though neither club has any known interest in adding another D-man. So obviously this trade not going through, it really does suck for everybody involved. The players are getting jebaited here. The teams are disappointed that the trade actually doesn't go through. And I'd say that Colton Parayko ends up looking like the bad guy because he exercised a right that he very much had the right to use. Except, I guess the trade getting leaked was some sort of a negotiation tactic trying to force Parayko into making a choice saying, yeah, please accept, please accept, please accept. Now it's in the media. Now you have to accept. Then it was like, no, sorry, I'm not going to do that. So with all that said, seems like we have ourselves a pretty big cluster of news here. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the Minnesota Wild trading for Jeff Petry from the Florida Panthers? Thoughts on Nic Dowd heading over to Vegas, Nic Roy heading over to Colorado, and Jack Thompson getting traded for Jett Woo? And finally, what are your opinions on Colton Parayko denying the trade? Let me know all your opinions in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on. And bye.